I'm 7 businesses in, and you need to always be very conscious of who you get into business with. Why I'm still here 11 years later, that's still the mystery.
Scott McKenna is on a mission to disrupt traditional industries with bold innovation. From South Africa to the UK, he shares his journey of failures and redefining entrepreneurship.
The failures are probably the best learnings. The wins you don't learn much from.
Failure, really, if you think about it, is the core or the starting point of success.
The bravest thing for people to do is to take those leaps.
Because only when you fail do you learn. From that learning comes growth. From that growth comes success.
Luck is probably part of the entrepreneurial journey. However, I don't think that luck just comes kind of manufactured by doing and trying and kind of pushing. You can find yourself, in a very different seat than you kind of ever thought that you would be in.
I believe the startup ecosystem here is just phenomenal.
South Africa is a fantastic country. It's transforming amazingly. Starting businesses, I think the UK is one of the very unique places in the world, probably.
100%.
Of all these companies we've started, I don't think one of the co-founders is from the UK. We wanted to provoke people. We could have got it wrong. For some people, maybe we did.
Welcome to the Immigrant Founders Pod, where we explore incredible stories of entrepreneurs who've crossed borders and created thriving businesses against all odds. And today, we're joined with Scott McKenna, who's a co-founder of Careless. Scott, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into all the amazing things you're doing in your current business and all the businesses that's led to your current business, let's go way back. So you are from South Africa?
Indeed.
And how did your journey start?
I was born and raised in Johannesburg. Went to quite a common school in Johannesburg. Most people go to Anglican or some school that's very strict, khakis, ties, black shoes. And at the age of about 8 or 10, moved down to the coast and kind of went to boarding school like many people do in South Africa. Very good for shaping, very good for growth. You become quite independent at that age. You all live in a boarding house. You live in quite a small farm town where there's not much to do other than keep yourselves busy. And when I finished school, almost my entrepreneurial journey started at about that age. I always wanted to be in hospitality. That was kind of the dream as a younger kid. Of course, a lot of parents would say that's a terrible idea. Don't do that. You should be an accountant, a lawyer, an engineer. That's what successful people do. So I listened to them. But prior to doing that, I pitched to our government a beach club. Got quite far in the pitch process. They actually kind of were quite happy to press ahead, but just not with me. So I was like, okay, this is quite tough. Went to University of Cape Town, a good part of 2 years. At school, I would say I was a pretty good student. At university, probably not. I thoroughly enjoyed learning, but not necessarily in this box of everything in your book is examinable and we don't tell you what's examinable and you 500-person lectures. So I had interest in being outdoors and doing other things with my time. And throughout that process, decided, been in South Africa a long time. Everyone that I would speak to when I was discussing ideas of starting businesses was very much on this tangent of, but 90% of businesses fail, or, that's so risky, and why would you want to do that? And I just kind of was like, I need to go somewhere where maybe there's a different perspective and there's a bit more risk appetite. So I came over to the UK. I finished my studies here, and still with the parents' voice in my head, accounting, finance, went and worked at a bank in Zurich. Tried that for some months. I was like, okay, I definitely don't want to do this. Affirmed that idea. Came over here. I was like, cool, I like to sell stuff. Took a job as a real estate agent. Tried that for a while. I was like, cool, interesting, but very binary, very same thing every day. And my sister actually was the first person. She made me sign an NDA when I saw her. She asked me for lunch one day while I was still working at this real estate agent. And she said, you need to sign this. I was like, Stacey, I'm your brother. What do you mean? She goes, sign it and I'll tell you my idea. And it was actually her who had this idea of why all these influencers creating, selling everyone else's stuff. Why is nobody going to them and saying, hey, you have million followers, you have 2 million followers. Why don't you make your own products? Why don't you design stuff that your followers already like? You're the designer, you're the creative. And I was like, I think this is a great idea. I think you could design great products. I think this is quite a big beast. You probably need somebody to help you with this. And the conversation kept going, and kind of I was like, you know what, I'm going to quit my job. I would be down to help you get this off the ground. I don't know if it's for me, but I love the idea. And that was the first dive into retail, to brand incubation, to figuring out what that looked like. And that was really the start of the whole journey of different businesses in the space, becoming an entrepreneur. So down to my sister, she's always been an amazing person, and out of it has come all weird and wonderful things.
That's amazing. How old were you when you pitched to the government?
18. 17.
Why do you think you were not the right person?
Well, I don't think it was so much about the right or wrong person. I think it was framed as, this is a great idea, but we want to put it out for tender. So you could compete to get your own idea, but you're going to be, competing with people who have industry experience, on 17, on fresh out of school. And it turned out anyway that the venue was a national heritage site. It was an old logging storage for Dutch East India Company back in the day, which is why it was such a cool space. And the landlord was like, it's a no for anyone. So that door was shut. I was like, cool, no one's taking my idea anyway, so I'm good. I can move on. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but that technically was your first pitch entrepreneurial experience.
Yep. I still have the deck.
No
I
way.
look at it every now and then just for a laugh. But I think, I don't know, maybe I'm sure many people must have this, but when I was in school or university, I think lots of people specialize. Some people just know, I want to do accounting, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be an engineer. I think that's great. I was in this, which I think now is wonderful, but at the time, terrible space. So I was like, I have no idea what I want to do. I want to do a bunch of things, and I definitely don't want to specialize in anything. But my university didn't really offer this type of, diverse degree. It was either, one of the boxes. And I think just naturally, that's kind of the outcome that happened, is you keep doing different things, you keep trying different things, you figure out what you don't like. I don't think I could ever, even in my future, work on just one thing. I don't have I like to keep busy, and I like to keep my mind switching. But yeah, I think it depends on your personality. It depends what you like to do.
Yeah, I think university is quite interesting. I speak to a lot of university students, and I see the anxiety and stress just somehow compounds year on year. I'm in university and I'm studying X because my parents have told me this, or there's societal pressure or whatever that may be. And you're right. The measurement of success is I'm an engineer, doctor, never an entrepreneur. Although now I see a few universities, trying to incubate, the whole startup entrepreneurial type of model. But for the most part, I see a lot of students confused or conflicted because, oh my God, I don't know what the right path is. I know I'm doing engineering, but I'm not too sure if I want to do it. I've just been doing it because my parents have asked me to do. So, what should I do? I don't know what to do. But the reality is, I think, and I've spoken to a lot of them as well. And my very simple question to them is, what's your favorite fruit? Yeah. Some might say apple, banana. Okay, why? Why is apple your favorite fruit? Because you've tried banana and strawberries and grapes and so on. So it's really important for you to try different things in life to finally come to the conclusion, okay, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the funny thing, and look, the world has changed a lot. We have YouTubers and who are brands and have their own products. I think the goal of what you can be now has changed a lot. But I have two parents who are both entrepreneurs and still were indoctrinated with the idea of, well, no, you must be an accountant or a lawyer or one of these things.
That's so interesting.
I had a travel blog growing up. I was quite interested in content production. I was building up quite a good following. I was reviewing restaurants in the early days of influencing. So I was always trying different things. When I was living in Los Angeles for some time after my studies, I was buying denim jackets at the market and stitching badges on them and selling them to people. So, I think there's definitely signs that you have an entrepreneurial spirit. I think now the world is in an awesome place where I think a lot of parents are probably encouraging their kids, and universities and everyone is trying to figure out what this new curriculum looks like, because it's not you like apples, so you only do apples now. It needs to be more diverse. It needs to be more, I think, pushing the boundaries of letting people taste all the different fruits and figure out what they do and don't like. It's probably the thing I see now with a lot of people who've been specialists for so long and now they want to branch out. The biggest question or worry they always have is, but what should I do? And I always have the same answer. It's like, well, go and try a bunch of stuff and figure out what you don't like. It's a much easier way to figure out what you do like. No one knows what they like, just off the bat, I don't think. So I'm excited, especially for us one day having kids. It's quite interesting to sit on the other side and wonder if we're going to be saying, be a lawyer next time.
Exactly, because it's quite interesting that both your parents are entrepreneurs and they still push you in this space. Something, oh my God, like, what are we going to do? No, it's too much stress. Don't do it. You must be absolutely mad to start a business by yourself. But so you you came here to study.
Yep.
Why the UK? Was there anyone here? Was your sister here? Was a family, friends?
So my sister, again, she was the first one to move over here. She was at Central St. Martin. She's an amazing creative product designer. And she's also the reason I moved over here. I had actually no plan to move here. I was not enjoying Cape Town so much. We were over here on a family trip. I had a suitcase with me, and she was like, by the way, I've applied to you at a university here and you got in while we're here. And I was like, that's strange. I'm at a university, as you do when you're young, a little bit offended. Like, why would you do that? And for lack of sounding crazy, she was like, I know that you're trying to figure out what you want to do. So I've booked you this really famous psychic. And I think you should just go see it if you're open to it. And long story short, I went to go see the psychic. I was debating whether going back or not. And I just didn't go back. I kind of just stayed here with my bags. I went to this university the following Monday, didn't know a soul. And, so she has really been, for me at least, this person who's opened up all these doors for me with these little gestures or ideas or brilliant ideas. And I think that's probably, the thing that has opened all those doors is also just the willingness to jump into things and go, okay, cool. I mean, why not? Like, what is, I know what's there at home.
Yeah.
I know what is available back there.
Yeah.
I know in some time I want to move to the UK. I think like many South Africans, South Africa is a fantastic country. It's transforming amazingly. But when I was there, it was still very small community, very much the same people you went to school with, you go to university with. Everyone was a chartered accountant. And for me, it makes you feel a bit like you're a failure because you don't like those things. You can do them, but you're not passionate about them. And if you are doing them, you're not doing as well as everyone else because, again, you're not passionate about it. So UK, I'm Irish, of Irish descent on one of the sides of my family. So it was an easy switch to come and live here. For South Africans, it's not very easy to get into a lot of places.
Correct.
It's a lot of application and visa, etc. And culture, rugby, a lot of the similar things we have at home, bar the weather. But yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell why the UK. Why I'm still here 11 years later, that's still the mystery. But I think for starting businesses, I think the UK is one of the very unique places in the world, probably
100%,
where you can jump on a website, pay £13, register your own trademark. The support that you get is a different discussion from, government or whatever schemes they probably should have. But I think it's a weird and wonderful place where if you're open to failing and you want to try out ideas and you don't need funding, especially service business, this is a great place to kind of test out all of these different avenues because the opportunity cost is, pretty low. Barring, retail and different kind of industries. But I think for that, it's been, I'm 7 businesses in and, I don't know many other countries you could do that much that quickly.
I agree. Although I did pay £19, so I need
It was
to,
£19.
So I need to ask you how the hell did you pay 13?
It's been a while, so you're probably right.
No, but I've spoken to a lot of people asking them how they've, the journey shift to the UK. Not one person has told me they came with a bag and never went back. So that's quite interesting. And it's also interesting or also amazing for you because you had your sister, someone that you trust. And off the back of it, one idea led to something else, and then I'm sure we're going to speak about all that now. But it's also important to acknowledge you having an Irish descent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm ethnically Indian, so we've got a similar situation. How do you really move to the UK? So a lot of people come through the education route. You might get a job, but the reality is that's again not as easy as it is. So it's also not very easy to come to the country as well. So I think obviously it's a fortunate position that you had that passport, which gave you the ability to move into the country. Because I speak to a lot of South Africans as well, and definitely a lot of people aspire to come, but easier said than done.
Absolutely, I think it's why a lot of people. I think that's why that stigma of being an engineer, a lawyer, an accountant has come in, is because South Africans are known, and to generalize, but it's quite popularly known as very hardworking, very well educated, very driven. We have one of the top chartered accountancy degrees in the world. Our lawyers are working everywhere. You go to any large company in the UK, you'll find a bunch of South Africans everywhere. The problem with that, though, is that a lot of people who don't come on, a visa they've inherited from their heritage, is you get caught into a company where they sponsor your visa, and now you're in the trap of, oh, well, you can come over, no problem, it's really easy. But if you ever want to leave us, you need to go home, or you need to find somebody else to sponsor your visa. So I'm incredibly lucky to have that passport. Not a lot of people, and they have cutoffs for that stuff too.
Yeah.
My mom was actually, the story of that is quite crazy. My mom was in the car on the radio in Johannesburg back in the 90s, and she heard a guy come on saying how he got his Irish passport and how there was going to be a cutoff date. So she applied for my dad and his brothers, and then for herself, and then for my sister and I. And a lot of people now don't have that opportunity. But
What?
kind of a slim chance for, back then to find out, oh, well, you can actually do this and get these issued. I have some step siblings and a lot of friends who, every time they want to come, they have to go to the visa office.
Yeah.
Their flights have to be booked. Can't hop over to see some friends in Europe. You need a Schengen. So it's tough, and it's interesting because, many of the European South Africans obviously have descent from here, but don't have that option to do the same. So very lucky. If I'd gone the CA route and then been stuck in the back, I think I would have been quite a different person.
I can resonate because all Indians are also doctors.
There you go.
But it's also quite interesting that your mom also actually acting upon that, what she heard on the radio, because again, this is way back when. So you're like, okay, so we know how much of a value that is, and should I actually do it? But
My cousins didn't.
wow,
And,
you see, yeah,
And I mean, there's always a will and a way, but the truth is, luck plays a lot into life and into chances, and I think luck coupled with a little bit of risk appetite, you can find yourself, in a very different seat than you kind of ever thought that you would be in.
So you believe in luck then?
Very much.
Okay.
Yes. Not so superstitiously, but I think that luck is probably part of the entrepreneurial journey. There's a lot of worked with through our branding agency when we're kind of still at our really pushing that 35 different founder brands that we worked with, could be from naming stage through to go to market or established brands. And I've seen some people who just got bad luck. I've seen, but had a great business and a great idea. I've seen some who had kind of an okay idea, but just the right timing and a little bit of luck of the right person coming along. So I think definitely, however, I don't think that luck just comes. I think it's kind of manufactured by doing and trying and kind of keep pushing. So whether it's luck or persistence, I'm not sure. I think in my mind, it's a combination of both of these things, and they kind of drive each other in the same direction.
So and there's a reason I asked you that question, because I'm going to share my own personal journey story. So a couple of years ago, so I was in the property sector for a very long time as well, by the way. So I started from brokerage, and then I was buying and selling and so on. And for the longest time, I really felt I was just so unlucky. Every time I touched a deal, it did not close, but someone else closed or someone else closed. And I was like, man, I'm doing exactly the same thing they're doing. And perhaps a lot of the times I was more experienced, I had better contacts and so on. I was just unlucky, and they were luckier than me. Interestingly, since I shifted my mindset towards, I create my own luck, and it's hard work and consistency and persistence and all that, I've somehow become luckier. I don't know how to explain that, but it's my focus. Like, I've really deliberately, consciously shifted my focus from the luck aspect, and somehow, I don't know, I just took accountability of anything and everything that happened to me from there on. So, if the deal closed, is because of me. If it didn't close, it's on me, So I don't know, that's what I
think that's, you explained it perfectly, is I've also been in positions back when in retail, wow, unlucky with the business is great, but the wrong business partner and it fails, or certain things happen. And I think you can get into that mental state of, oh, I'm just unlucky.
Yeah.
And then you work that little bit less hard, and then more bad stuff happens because you're working that little bit. I think it's a mindset thing.
Yeah.
I've always been lucky, even outside of work. Just some of those times you're like, wow, that was probably one of the 9 lives. That just, just not acknowledge it too much, but let's not forget it. But I think that is it. I mean, I know some people who have also just shifted like that. I think it's a mindset. I think when you think things are bad, you don't do as much, you're not as motivated. I think if you take everything on the chin, and I think accountability is probably the most important thing in business and in life, is constantly reflecting and constantly taking ownership, because I mean, we're all doing the things directly ourselves, which means that the responsibilities and the reactions are directly from us. So I wasn't always so lucky, and definitely not in business, but I think you probably do manufacturing. I'm glad to hear that it did switch.
So you've obviously done a lot of reflection, considering you've had 7 businesses in 11 years in the UK.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, let's take a pause. Okay, so walk me through it.
Kind of a natural progression. And you can coin businesses, I think, incorporated companies, whether something becomes, I think they're 2 different things. You can incorporate a company, it never becomes a business.
Sure.
You only have a business once you have a business, and you know when that is because the market tells you, okay, there's something here. The first one was our social collective. It still trades today. It's changed drastically what it does, but that was a one-stop shop for brand incubation. So anything from branding, product design, a lot of what the other businesses have become were all under one roof. And very quickly learned that we had all the right ingredients, but looking internally, we had all the right ingredients. But if you were a customer on, an influencer who wants to make a brand, or you are a brand looking for advisory, it was very confusing what we did, because we did everything. And I think in business, sometimes that can be, your messaging needs to be clear. We launched those kind of 6 brands in just under 2 years. We had great success with, getting our products into the right places. We had selling in 127 countries around the world. We had an amazing influencer cohort who, when you're reverse engineering a product launch and you already have 5 or 2 million customers, on one influencer plus their network, it's quite interesting to see how that can quickly generate a lot of sales and a lot of interest, especially from retailers. And of course, over time, I think you learn that retail, there is no cheat code. You might start out the gates quite quick, but working a retail brand is years of work. It's years of craft. It's years of figuring out what the right products are, what the wrong products are, how to move stock, all these kind of things that I think everyone thinks you'll just start selling in more and more and more. But more means more work and more packing and more picking. when I was looking for some of the photos for the pod, I saw our first Harvey Nichols order was 1,300 pairs of sunglasses.
Wow.
Which we packed in our office, the 3 co-founders and the
That's
team.
insane.
Once you've done that, you really know what retail is, and you're like, is this really what I want to be
You
doing?
never want to wear sunglasses for the rest of your life.
And then I guess when we kind of saw out the lifespan of a lot of those relationships, we learned as a team, we probably should have gone a bit more slowly. We should have been a bit more patient. You need to always be very conscious of who you get into business with. Some people can, of course, tell you what they want to do. Do you want to be an equity person? Do you want to be an income person? They don't always get it right. And when you find that out at a later stage, it obviously throws some spanners in the wheel. But moving to business number 2 was kind of organically out of, we had built the success of building brands, and we now started to have other founders or friends or people we knew who were like, hey, I'm starting a brand. Could you help me? So myself and still now creative director of 7-8 years, Valerie, who's an absolute genius, we started Our Social Creative, so all under the Our Social brand. And that was purely a B2B brand and digital agency focused on creating identity, creating strategy, creating if somebody needed a website facelift, they needed decks, we were kind of creative consultants and brand strategists to help founders bring their vision to life and also help them, get in to the places they need to do and kind of position in the right way. And there we worked on 35 founder brands or all types of brands. McLaren Applied, who now became Lavoie, now bought Van Moof. We did their branding identity. We worked with BAFTA, Visa, a bunch of different companies.
Big names.
So a lot of pitching and then realizing, but we actually can't really deliver on this because we have so much work. But got a really good idea of what it is to work on the other side. We always had everyone in-house because we learned quite quickly as founders, paying agencies is very expensive. There's a margin on everything. And if you want to be quick and agile, having talented creatives in-house can be very beneficial. And then throughout the period of COVID, we, much like you, had to pivot and go, okay, retail, even if we have demand to do retail brands, it's too difficult at the moment. Just the logistics around it and the demand for it, demand was through the roof, but logistics for small businesses in the UK to figure out what Brexit meant, what COVID meant, was it just going to be a bubble and would it kind of taper off? We decided to stay clear of the retail side, and the talent manager that was always in our business, Kay, who's now the co-founder in HypeSight, we got talking during COVID, and I was like, Kay, you're so good at this, and you have all these influencers who still want to work, and you have all this, brand network from when you were at Burberry. He was for their 8 years at Burberry. I was like, let's, Valerie and I and you, let's just incubate our own agency, and you keep doing all the work you're doing, but you do it under a new roof. So HypeSight was born. That business has been growing kind of year on year. We operate much of this kind of big family of Our Social original staff. And then along the journey, we had a few other brands that were made as businesses, which never really became businesses. They, in all truth, they probably should have been collections, would have simplified things a lot more. But I think when you're an early founder and you're trying to build this big Revolve style business, you're thinking joint ventures and equity creation and investor value and all the wrong things. And that kind of then brought us to the final one last year, which was kind of a personal passion project for me, which was, I always built businesses that other people were really good at the delivery, and I was always really good at the building and the selling. But over some time, that kind of wears off, and you're just a salesperson selling somebody else's oil, and you rely on other people to deliver, and you don't really get to get your hands as dirty. And then Careless was born after a flight back from South Africa. Just had seen some remnant of what we've built, and was like, why is the insurance industry so bad in the UK? Why is nobody doing anything? And long story short, had a beer with a friend of 10 years, who's now my co-founder, And 2 funding rounds later, and kind of, delving into the insurance world is now number 6 or 7. I struggle to remember.
You've lost count now.
But I think as we were discussing earlier, it kind of just happens from doing things. And I think once you have a lot of good people around you, which takes some time to figure out who are good people to have in your business and not, really wanted to hold on to them, and really wanted to also, I think, deliver value for them, for all the value that they delivered for me over the years, and kind of all the journey that we've been through. So very much a natural progression, not very much planning, kind of just saw, that we have something amongst us as individuals or as a company that people want, and also learned that specifying and kind of really taking a clear communication of what you do has a much greater effect than being the everything company, unless you're Amazon.
Yeah. Or what Elon Musk is trying to do with X, maybe.
Yeah.
Before we get into all the different businesses that you started, and now Careless as well, I love the brand, by the way. I think it's fantastic. I agree with you 100%. UK, because I also moved from Dubai, and I was exploring the US a little bit. I was in New York for some time, in some accelerators there, and then exploring between New York or London. But I think UK is just first of all, I think it's a fantastic melting pot. You've got people from different walks of life. I think that's just amazing. But I believe the startup ecosystem here is just phenomenal. Not only for fintech. I know fintech is huge in London, perhaps the biggest. But yeah, I think the incubation scene is just phenomenal. I think the proximity to Europe, minus, now there's Brexit and there's obviously limitations of Europeans coming in and so on. However, I don't think it stops, startups, and doesn't stop ideas, doesn't stop entrepreneurship. I think it's just phenomenal, at least for me. And you're a testament as well, considering you've had so many different businesses in this short span of time, because it is a short span of time. I mean, looking at 7 businesses in the span of 11 years, if you don't have that support system, you're also not able to, accomplish or start businesses in this manner.
Yeah, I think kind of 2 parts to what you said is it's the reason I'm probably still in the UK and still such a big advocate for it, albeit it's changed, I think, in the last 2-3 years. Is you said it's a melting pot. I mean, it is. Of all these companies we've started, I don't think one of the co-founders is from the UK. I actually know they're not. We got France, Sri Lanka, Sweden, South Africa, all over. So I think for that, to work with so many people who have such a different perspective and also across different industries, the learning opportunities are just kind of crazy. The caliber of companies people have worked at, of course, is super impressive and kind of unique. I will say, I wish the capital environment was the same as the US or maybe Dubai. It's a little bit of, I think there's a bit of pessimism when VCs or angels or high net worths are looking at businesses here. I think there's always a lot of deliberation over quite small amounts or quite insignificant amounts, what would be considered insignificant in the US, for example. But that also could be a good thing, because, you can't just fund every business or every person that has an idea. But I agree. I think the UK, and testament to kind of both of us, young founders really, if they knew how easy it was, or people knew how easy it was, I think there would be a lot more young business or SMEs. Less competition for us, not the worst thing. But I hope, especially in these next kind of 5 years, with a little bit of government intervention in actually pushing for startups, because a lot of us are coming over here, taking a lot of risk, taking a lot of personal financial risk. There isn't that much support, and I think they're losing out, because there's a lot of people who want to work in cool businesses, who want to work with young, like-minded individuals. You see it more and more with people who've been in big establishments like Goldman's or anywhere, who now want to make that pivot. And I think a little bit more advocacy for that, or just communication around that, would probably do them a world of good, because for starting a company, as I said earlier, I don't think there's many better places go to the US, but competition is rife.
Yeah.
And as you said, you get to meet and work with the world's talent in one place.
Yeah. And I think relatively easier as well. Again, this is just my perspective from a legal framework perspective as well. When you look at US versus the UK, you have a lot of things already set up, less red tape in a lot of aspects. Things are pretty much easier compared to a lot of other places. Because I was really mindful as well. And, considering Dubai, Dubai is fantastic. It's relatively easier to start a business in Dubai as well. But talking about, again, my perspective, but talking about the funding scene, the Middle East or Dubai versus the UK, I actually prefer the UK, even in terms of valuations.
Yeah.
UK is a lot better still. Yes, there is a difference between the UK and the US.
Yeah.
I feel fundamentally maybe it's the investors as well. In the US, you have a lot of exited founders who've now become investors. Obviously, because if you look at the whole cycle as well, they've been innovating perhaps a couple of years before this region. So they've been able to have that space to exit. And now they're just paying it forward, reinvesting in new startups. And here, perhaps you don't have so many exited founders, ex-founders who are investors.
Agreed.
So I think maybe that's why you have maybe lower risk appetite here versus the US. But like you rightly said, maybe it's not a bad thing. So yeah, you're a little bit more conservative, but that also pushes you to, focus on profitability. And anyway, now the world has changed.
Yeah.
It's not like how it used to be 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And I think that's lesson learned for the market. There's a market correction. We were speaking about it before we started the pod as well. Hopefully things should start picking up from 2025. But the last 2 years we've seen, it's really been a shit show.
Agreed.
So,
I think I agree, and I don't think so much risk appetite is a good thing.
Right.
I think, as you said, the goal for most founders is to become an exited founder and then be able to help other founders and take this, sit in the other seat on the other side of the room. The US, they're the best at that. They've done, the list goes on for them. And I think probably one of the good parts that comes out of the UK too is that it might be looked at being risk averse, but maybe it's also just that the wrong time for some people. I think young founders get away with a lot probably in the US because these guys are a little bit more cowboy-esque. Here, one thing I've learned too, fundraising is a lot easier when you have experience and you've been involved in businesses that have raised debt. You've learned a lot of these things that, you can't learn any way other than just doing the job or starting your first business, starting your second business, whatever it might be. And once you do cross that barrier, I agree with you. The capital market here can be very fruitful.
Yeah.
They like operators, they like multiple operators, they like people, they understand that people who have done, the job of being a founder more than once know a lot of things that you can't teach. And like you, I think if the capital markets, become a little bit more healthy the next 2 years, great for companies like ours or great for growing companies that are going to be raising future rounds. And I think we're seeing a little bit more high net worths coming here from other countries too. So I think it's an exciting time.
100%. I think like you said, if there was more done, more younger people would come into the space, create more businesses, i.e. create more jobs, impact the economy in a positive manner, impact the GDP in a positive manner. There's just so much good that can come out from entrepreneurship. But I think things are changing. If you look at the scene, like in 5 years, just 5 years ago versus today. And I think conversations like this are also important. I think it's important for us to keep on sharing, us to build, keep on building in public so that people also understand, not just the good, but also the bad. And what is the learning curve from the bad? And like you also rightly said, investors need operators. There are different types of operators. Investors are now, in my opinion, are also looking at operators who've been there, done that. and not necessarily have had success. That is not that relevant as much as, because business schools are great, but you will only know when you've actually gone through the shit.
Yeah.
So it's really important for investors to have that level of comfort where, okay, you've been through that a couple of times, so you know the space. Okay, so we're on the same page. We can speak the same language.
Yep.
It just makes both our lives easier.
Yeah, and I think I 100% agree. And I think the flip side of that too is that founders or new founders also need to know that the failures are a good thing.
Yes.
And they should own them. Like going as a multiple founder and saying, of the 7, still 4 are trading, growing. That's an attractive thing. People want to hide the ones that didn't work, but why? You've built the experience. You've spent the time learning the business. You might have been some bad luck. It might have been some external, factors that happen like Brexit or COVID. There's a ton of weird things that can happen in business, but I think by doing stuff, you're always learning in your industry. You're learning more about what to do and what not to do. And I think you as a multiple founder will know. Just knowing that stuff, you save so much time.
Oh, absolutely.
The most insane amount of time and money is saved by just having done it before and going, oh, we did it that way. Totally avoid. This is exactly what we need to do to get off the ground. It's going to be quick. It's going to be easy. So I think that's something. And when I speak to founders too, is really like the failures are probably the best learnings. The wins you don't learn much from. The wins often are just followed by more work, because you realize, oh shit, now we have more orders or more sales or more clients to service, and okay, take a quick break, one night out, and let's go on. Whereas the failures, you get time to reflect. You have housekeeping to do to get out of a bad situation or to liquidate a business or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Might just find the business just wasn't working or just wasn't generating the profit that you wanted. It's washing its face. It's nice, but if everyone isn't passionate about it, well, then why do it? So there's so many things that could be deemed a failure. For me, I just look at them as, like you said, business schools are great, but they teach you the theory. It's not how the world works. It's not how markets work. You can write a 1,000,000-page business plan about how you're going to nail it, and then you get in the market and nobody buys anything, and you're just like, wow, okay, now I know some proof, some practical experience. So I think on both sides, it's I hope to see more and more founders not starting businesses once, but starting like 2-3 times and just keep going, because I think there's such a value in being hungry for failure, or just hungry for continuously trying to thread the needle.
Yeah, I think for anyone listening to this pod, really, I think the one big takeaway, and I've been in your shoes as well. I've had a couple of businesses. I've had many more failures than I've had successes. So you can resonate. But I think the one thing that people can take away is the relationship with failure. I think the one thing you need to, so learning is difficult, unlearning is even harder. So the schooling system, education system, the relationship with failure within that system is that failure is bad. You fail, oh my God, you have to repeat the year and whatever. So it's just bad. But like you rightly said, failure really, if you think about it, is the core or the starting point of success, because only when you fail do you learn. From that learning comes growth. From that growth comes success. Yeah. But we celebrate success. In hindsight, we should be celebrating the failures, because again, like you rightly said, you actually don't learn anything from your success. You're just happy for that moment, and you're like, oh my God, shit, there's more work. Okay, let's keep going. Like I remember we closed a funding round last year. It was great. We closed it. Then there was that success moment. We're like, okay, let's get back to work. Now there's more work. Now the targets we have are just doubled and quadrupled. Shit,
Yeah, exactly. I think, look, failure has often been deemed as an embarrassing thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's embarrassing about going out and trying something. I think maybe, a bit of a Gen Z, or grew up in when Instagram became a thing. I went from being quite an avid content creator to not wanting to do it, because I started working in the industry and seeing a different side to it. And I think many of us probably these days, and especially what you guys are doing for mental health, I think is a lot of people worrying about what other people think of them, and worry about, but if I try and then it fails, everyone's going to, know, and they're going to think that I think that's, for a lot of people, the biggest deterrent. Once you actually get into business, you realize that stuff doesn't matter. You've got much more stressful stuff to worry about. The last thing you care is if Sally from high school knows that you failed, in some business. But I think the bravest thing for people to do is to take those leaps, whether it's changing job or starting a business or whatever it is. And I think it's quite sad to see how many people don't. But similarly, also sometimes when founders do fail the first time and they're just like, oh, okay, I failed, so I need to go back to getting a job, and like I tried. Because as we said, like the first failure is just one of those, and you might not find the right one or the right success or that bit of luck if you just throw in the towel after one go and you're like, okay, no, try it. I'm going back to Goldman's. They're going to take me back on the contract. I'm going to live there for the next 35 years. And it's going to be great. So yeah, I think failure is actually fun.
Yeah.
If you have the right mindset about it.
I think you truly fail if you stop.
I agree.
Because anything other than that is just learning.
Yeah.
You're just constantly learning.
Yeah, and if you're persistent, you can just keep going.
You just keep going.
You'll get there.
You just keep going. Before we come to Careless, I really want to touch on you in the fashion industry.
Yep.
The fashion industry is already so difficult. I'm speaking from an outsider's perspective, but I've heard that it's cutthroat, it's difficult, and there's a lot of competition and so on. So already in a difficult industry, you're able to close these big names, and how?
I think fashion industry is interesting. If you're we're very lucky that we've worked with so many influencers and so many, let's say, social, people who have a lot of social equity, people who are big on Instagram, people who are taste makers or curators or whatever you want to call them these days. But I think there's probably two reasons why we've done well in the fashion industry. We've always been very strong in branding and understanding how to position ourselves for the clients we want to work with, rather than just positioning ourselves, like many people do. This is what I want my brand to look like, and then realizing it's not a fit. So always designing and to be honest, even before designing, brand strategy is the key. What are we trying to do? What are we trying to create? And who are we trying to sell to? And once you've figured that out, your vision, your mission, your target, we'll then look at the identity and go, okay, if we want to achieve demand from those types of clients or people, we need to then build this type of identity. So trying to make sure that we fit, and of course set ourselves apart from competition. From the beginning, in our retail, there was influencers creating merchandise. We took a stance, we won't create merchandise. We create high street quality goods that could sit in Harvey Nichols, Selfridges. Yes, it's going to cost us more. It's going to take longer to design. The brands are going to be harder to nail in terms of identity. But if we get it right, we will have a lot more people who want to stock us. So on a retail side, in terms of actual product distribution, that was the approach. With our talent agency, we looked at what everyone was doing. Said, okay, cool, there's lots of influencer agencies that are doing your traditional go on trips, branded, et cetera, your typical kind of good looking people that are picturesque and everyone wants to look like. And we said, well, let's be the inclusive agency. Let's work with people who, to be honest, are mainly immigrants, actually. Let's work with people who don't look like everyone else. Let's work with a very diverse talent pool who are from different parts of the world, different ethnicities, different languages. And let's build the inclusive, curated talent management and set ourselves apart from what we can offer there. But also we completely built the HypeSight brand identity around leveraging the context that we have in luxury. If you see our website, if you see our content, the content that we produce feels like it comes from luxury brands, and that's done intentionally so that when they see us or they see our mood boards, it all fits and it's very easy for them to see a collaboration. So I think it's always about, and it doesn't matter what industry you get in, it's almost working back from who is the end customer, who is the end B2B partner, what are we trying to achieve, take all the emotion out of it, and then build backwards and go, okay, can work with the same when you want to find somebody to acquire your business. Is figuring out what those people want from a business and then deciding if that fits in your vision mission and then if you can actually achieve that. I think fashion is more and more and more demanding content from creators. If you think, back when in 2017 when we were doing campaign shoots, we would build the sets in our office. But still, we would have to hire a photographer, we'd have to hire a stylist, we'd have to hire all these people, and it would end up costing a lot of money that you ultimately don't really earn back. It's kind of a sunk cost. You can only use content for 6 months before everyone's seen it. It has to remain fresh. And I think the creator economy has really transformed this whole industry into, I'm a advertiser, but I'm also production. And you give me the brief, or we agree the brief, or we design the brief for the brand, and then they go off and produce it. And it's this new wave of relatively low cost, high value exchange kind of content production, where we're taking out a lot of the extra fluff that we used to have around it, and just going, this person and you are a great fit, and we can create great content. And I think that's why we've achieved, especially at HypeSight, annual contracts for our clients, or and those have been running over years with Gucci or any kinds of brands, because the quality has to be kind of always at the forefront of what you're doing, not just quantity. And you see a lot of agencies, and we'll see a lot of agencies in the next years fading away, because more talent doesn't mean more deals. I think more deals is consistently delivering value to a really strong group of clients who are kind of, economy proof. It's, at least for us, has worked very well. And I think very excited to see where we can kind of take that. Back in the day, you wouldn't have thought that a lot of those brands would be so heavily invested in creators, whereas now it kind of just makes sense.
Yeah, and I think, people buy from people don't buy from companies. And I think that narrative is just becoming that much more real every single year. 2025 is going to be a much bigger year than 2024 when you look at the whole creator economy. But I think it's also interesting, and again, for people listening to the pod trying to come into this space, because one would think, oh my God, you're looking at this big brand. Maybe I'm a small, I'm a small fish in the pond. How do I even approach this brand? But as long as you're delivering quality, and you also somehow you have a unique proposition, because you spoke about having that inclusive type of model. If you can differentiate yourself, there is a way in, because big brands are also looking out for different ways of cutting through the noise, because there's a huge competition within their space as well.
Absolutely. And I think we were also lucky that we had a lot of these companies or brands. We do a lot of work for Harrods and Selfridges and Harvey Nichols. We used to be stocked in there in some of them. So they've kind of, and I think this again goes to really leveraging your failures, is those brands might not still exist, but the relationships and the network all still exist. And if you consistently deliver, probably three things, is like just good business, being honest and loyal and transparent, and more importantly, delivering value. Once people find that a big brand or small brand, people like to work with people who deliver good value. I think that's ultimately it. And you can be a team of, most of our businesses are a team of 2 or 3. Actually on the ground, doing the day-to-day work is usually 1 or 2, surrounded by back office support and whatever we need. But you don't need to be big to look big online or to have a big portfolio of work. I think that misconception of, oh, well, if you're not 10 or more in a company, it's kind of a farce. I think that's something that people tell you when you start a business, of you need to hire a bunch of people and you need to get a big office, because then you're like a legitimate business. You're not. You just got a bunch of overhead. You're a really stressed founder. And I think when you have the right people in a business, they do the work of 5 people. So your delivery and your care of the quality of your work is always kind of at the forefront, because everything needs to be up to scratch. When you're working in small teams, everyone has to trust each other. Everyone has to deliver. And I think, luckily for us, one of the blessings out of COVID was getting rid of our office, shedding weight because we had to, but also realizing that, A, we can all work remotely very effectively, that we all work on very different time schedules. It doesn't have to be in a box. We all need to be in the office at this time. We have unlimited leave for everyone. We got rid of offices. We don't clock check if people are working. We just realized with the right people, you don't have to spend time doing any of that stuff. Everyone can just spend time making sure they can be effective at their job. If that means they want to go take a morning walk, or they need to sit in the garden for 10 minutes and just take in some rays, I think that's and why I love what you guys are doing too is the stigma of a successful company. What is a successful company? It's just a group of people
That's it.
who achieve a common goal and do it really well.
That's it.
It's not like oh, this is what it is. Did you check all these boxes? What boxes? I think that's a beautiful thing in startups these days is that just a couple smart people, you can achieve a lot of stuff and look like a really big company, 100%. But on the inside, you're lean and mean.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's although it's very interesting you speak about, going fully remote, because you guys had an office, now you went fully remote. The world is slightly going the other way. So, a lot of large companies, without taking any names now, because we all know, were fully remote, COVID. And then now from hybrid, now they're pushing people to come 5 days in the office. So so do you think there's any value in people meeting in person?
I do.
Okay.
I think, at least, my perspective is built on my journey of offices. When my sister and I first started out, we were trying to get other people to join this first business of ours. And it's very hard to do that when they come in to meet you in your lounge.
Yeah.
It feels like very much a bootstrap startup, which it was. And it's hard to convince people from that position. So, we thought, well, let's get an office space because at least we have a place to work from. We can legitimize. And then we were kind of fell into that trap where it was, well, we have more work, so let's hire more people. And we didn't have a lot of leaders at that. I wasn't a leader. I didn't know what I was doing. I was 23. I worked 2 jobs. My sister also kind of similar situation. And we fell into that trap of, well, more people, bigger office.
Equal
let's
success.
have our stock there. Let's have a big stock cage. Let's pick and pack there. Let's have a studio area where we could shoot. So a lot of things that made sense. But the truth was, we actually weren't in a position yet to be looking so big because we didn't have the revenue to justify it. And in retail, you might make a ton of revenue, but your bottom line is always very slim. So I developed probably on 2 fronts is my job primarily in all of my businesses is business development. It's meeting people, it's facilitating incubation, facilitating growth. And a lot of my job is not done in an office. I don't sit behind a computer very much. I'm on the phone all the time. So for me personally, it was very hard to do my job in the office because I couldn't have a lot of conversations in front of 15 people. I, of course, could, but it's difficult. So I was often standing in the corridor or not in the office. And at that time, before remote working, if you weren't in the office, people deemed, well, you mustn't be working. Yeah. He's lazy. Meanwhile, you're there until 10 p.m. when everyone's gone and you're back in the office at midnight and you're always kind of just trying to fit enough time in the day. I think that I actually had canceled our office before COVID, but I hadn't told anyone. Then COVID happened and I was like, this is great. But to answer your question, I think there's definitely a place for an office. I think we're taking an approach now, and because I've worked with our creative director and my business partner Andre for a very long time, or known them for a very long time, we kind of took the decision from the beginning, like we need to interact. So instead of spending all this money on an office and all having to commute in from different parts of the city and having fixed office hours and building this office culture, let's rather make sure that we do an offsite every quarter, if that's in London or in the countryside. But the goal is to do it in somewhere of a destination, whether that's in South Africa or on Marbella or somewhere where we can rent a house and we can all work together for a week and also get that kind of team building outside of work. And similarly here, we meet up regularly to just meet and have a brainstorm. But the truth is, because we all work in such different silos, the quality of life of being able to work at home primarily is really good. Of course, there's the loneliness aspect, there's the stimulation aspect, which I think definitely important. And I think being so fully remote, we've been fully remote now for 3 years. We know that we need to be more engaged with each other, and definitely especially once Careless goes live and we're running an app, there will need to be hands-on, and it's easier to do things when you're in a room. I think for larger organizations, that's why it makes sense. Yeah. But for smaller organizations, to be honest, for any new founders, I would say push the office as far as possible. There's a lot more things to spend your money on. And just because an office works for you 9 to 5 doesn't mean that your staff or your team operate the same way. Our team, we have some team members who get up at 5 a.m. and finish early. We have some who get up at 10 a.m. but work until midnight, or some who work, the late hours of the night. So I think you've got to figure that out. But I think, I don't think offices are a bad thing. I just think it can be a trap. And I think with the right people, based on their preferences, of course, if everyone likes working at home, you can actually get a lot out of people, because that freedom of working your own time and being able to engage in a structured way or planned way might reap some different benefits. But I think it really depends on the type of business, the type of team you have, what you're trying to achieve. I think we're all working on completely different things, and we're all very different people. So to try and put everyone into one space and apply rules to it, for us at least, wasn't really that productive from a mental or output kind of perspective.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. I think every business is different, and every business is at a different stage. So I'll give you our example. We didn't have an office for the first 5 years because that was not a priority, and we grew the business to where it is today. And the early years are actually the most fundamental. And we were working, remotely, also with a remote team across the globe. So we had people in South Africa and India and here, and things just worked. We've got an office now is because the dynamics has slightly changed. We're actually, in fact, moving into some sort of a hybrid approach, simply because the company and the team has become that much more mature. The leadership team, from a strategy perspective, is just easier to meet in person, have those strategy sessions. Loneliness, I think one of the things that I've actually noticed, especially, and I know quite a few solopreneurs, and I think one thing that really comes out of it is the loneliness aspect. I think, we're all human beings are social beings. I mean, there's a reason why we're doing this podcast in person versus a virtual podcast. The relationship that we're able to build, the exchange of energy today across each other is completely different than a virtual screen. Technology is great. It's brought the whole world, so much closer. But I mean, nothing beats this in-person energy and exchange. And so for us now, we've moved into this slight hybrid approach, just so that we can, impact that team building, that bonding, strategy. But yeah, I mean, every company is different, and I agree with you 100%, especially at the early days. Yeah, stay as far from the office as possible, because you have many other priorities that you can work on. And business, we know we've got partners now who are unicorns, and they're completely remote. So that also works. That also doesn't, there's not a prerequisite that if you've reached a certain head count, now you should move into hybrid, or now you should get an office. So every company is different. It's like every individual is different. But yeah, I think there's no right answer, and whatever works for you.
I agree. I think it falls into company culture too,
100%.
which is often driven by the founder.
Correct.
If there's a lead founder or co-founders, they agree on a kind of culture they want to work on. But again, it depends on the work. For companies that need to be in the same room, in the beginning, try to do that in the lounge. It might not be the most legitimate, but it'll save you a lot of money.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure next year we're going to have to take an office at some stage, because the business might require it. So you've just got to play that game and figure out, I always just gauge it on productivity. And pre-COVID, I also had fallen into that trap of, well, if people aren't in the office, they won't work. And I think that we've all seen how that's shifted.
Correct.
So now we're in this kind of luxurious space where we can decide, do we want an office or do not? It's not about stigma. It's not about what anyone thinks. It's really about listening to your people and the needs of the business, and then figuring out what the happy medium is there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because there was a lot of lack of trust before this. Even when COVID hit, I'm like, okay, these people are sitting at home. Are they working or not working? That was a general mindset. And I think what COVID has done is that it has proved to the world that people can work from home remotely, and you can scale businesses and everything. And, especially during COVID, like tech businesses just skyrocketed. So actually productivity also somehow just went up. You also not wasting time commuting. So I think that is a fundamental shift as well. And now you're absolutely right, where now it's a choice.
Yeah.
Either ways work. What is good for business? You're doing it from a point of what is good for business, not do I trust my people or not?
Exactly. Well, and let's be honest, if you don't trust your people, you have the wrong people.
So, yeah. Oh, no, exactly.
Then you need to look at your HR department and say, guys, what's going on? We club watching. But the truth is, it takes time to find the right people to have in your business. So there is a need for that. It'll be interesting to see what happens the next years. I think it's going to be a big blended mix of full office, no office, a bit of a happy medium, and it'll be interesting too to see what happens to how the WeWorks and the freelance working spaces pivot. I've worked in a bunch of them. Workspace, WeWork. I've done my time at almost all of them. I don't have any interest in going back, but I think that there's definitely ways in which they could create spaces, much like you guys have here, where all of us can kind of leverage the benefits without maybe such a sticky financial burden of having a physical space.
Correct. So there's a lot of correlation I've seen in your previous businesses. You started a business and there was an offset. That's why there was second business, and these one business then supplemented the other business and so on. What's the correlation between Careless and all the other businesses?
So Careless was incubated essentially by our social creative. Valerie, who's is the creative director behind HypeSight, was the creative director behind our social collective, which was the creative director behind all of them, to be honest. So she is the common denominator. I mean, both of us are the common denominators. Of course, the founding team have always been involved, some less than others, but at different times. The real, I think, kind of shared identity or engine behind has been, we were really close founding team in the original business, and everyone had a different set of skills. And I really had a desire that if I didn't end up doing something else with these people, they would go and get a job, but I wanted that they were entrepreneurs, and I thought there's definitely an opportunity for us to give them each a platform and a vehicle to really try that out. I've always loved building things. I think that the building part of a business is the most fun. Once they become big, lose a little bit of their kind of attractiveness for me. But also, I think I've really learned that through doing courses or just practical, that starting businesses, you really just need a couple of people who have a very kind of specific set of skills. I usually look at it as like the idea person. Then you need an executor on the creative who can take the idea and bring it to life. You need a salesman and you need a finance guy. Okay, and if you have those recipes and you have experience in incubating, you can do things really quickly. Like we were talking earlier, go on the website, register a company, register a trademark, see if it's available. Next thing, you have a business. Now you just need some people. Careless, I knew, and especially with Valerie, she openly said to me when I was at some stage, she was like, I've got job offers, but I'm sticking with you because one day you're going to have an idea that's going to pay off. And and I enjoy working with you. And we've developed a really strong level of trust amongst all of us in all of these kind of co-founders. But having somebody like that who can take something from an idea and actually show somebody what it can be, I think is a huge amount of value in that, because things become real very quickly and then excitement becomes real. And because our branding agency, for instance, was just her and I, it's very easy for her and I to pivot. If we decided we're tired of client work and I've had an idea for Careless, well, do you, and it's not a requirement. I'm like, do you want to do this? Would you like to help build this? So she's a co-founder in Careless now. She's the creative director with myself and Andre. So it kind of, again, it's natural progression of hanging on to good people, not hanging on to good people, but seeing that it's very hard to find good people in business. I think that you can trust from a loyalty, but also from a quality and deliverables kind of perspective. And also people are hungry to take on new challenges. I think not everyone wants to jump into the insurance industry, in 30s and early or later 30s. It's not the most attractive industry. We have no experience in it, but what we do have experience and what we both enjoy, and I think throughout our teams, is going in with a fresh set of eyes, but also with a ton of branding experience and seeing and thinking, how could this be done differently? If you had a white paper, which we always do, how would we build this? And always thinking of the consumer first. And I think throughout our businesses, and you'll see from the identity and all the websites, they share quite a lot of commonality in the logo, the typeface, the tone of voice. As much as it's the same people behind them, they're all always designed with the end consumer in mind. So we might be experts or specialists, what you can call after working for that long in something. The market always knows better than you do, and we're very conscious of that. We try and use research and strategy and as much of the available resources we can find to form our strategy and form our opinions. But we also always, as I said, work backwards from who is the end person who will be on this app or be on this website, or which brand and what would they want. And let's try and put that in front of them and see if our thesis is right. If it's wrong, we just go back to the drawing board and we tweak it and figure it out. But yeah, I think that is our DNA, is brand first, strategy, strategy first, customer, brand, and then figure everything else out, because jumping into industries, you learn stuff really quickly.
Yeah.
You'll know this. You can learn everything on the job, but you only get to launch once, and rebranding is a lot harder than just getting it right the first time. It's not impossible. But I think it's probably why, and when we worked with so many clients, everyone's in a rush to launch now, to get it done now. I think taking your time is really important. And it's one thing we've learned too, is we've seen and been involved with 40 plus businesses. We've seen a lot of things. We've seen what works and doesn't work. We're trying to take all of that now and really carefully craft each experience with each business to really be in the best position to succeed. And I think we've got a lot of the right people behind us. Of course, now in insurance, we're realizing all the other people we might need to bring in who can fill the gaps that we can't. But yeah, I think same people, different businesses, that kind of commonality is probably and hopefully going to be there for a long time.
Yeah, I keep telling our core team as well, plum could be pineapple, banana, orange, doesn't matter. We could be selling anything tomorrow. It's the core set of people that changes everything, And once you've found those core set of people, that's it. I mean, the world is your oyster after that.
Agreed.
So, and I can tell Careless does have a creative person at its core, because the first time I saw your website, the first few seconds I was actually confused or surprised, but pleasantly surprised, and confused in a nice way, because that was not what I was expecting from an insurance brand.
Yeah.
So I think, kudos to your entire team, to you. You guys have done a fantastic job. I think the brand is just too sexy. If I could put one word, it's so cool.
Thank you.
And I think that's a disruption that, industries which are, the dated industries really need. And I think the disruption is needed not just because of the sake of disruption. I think disruption is needed because the world has changed. You're looking at, your target audience has changed. I mean, Gen Zs also need to know the importance of insurance. I think that's super important. You don't just do insurance from a tick in the box exercise. Their asks or requirement are completely different from even millennials, let alone anyone else. So you should be, you have ICP, you should be talking the same language to your ICP. And I think brands and that conversation are not just limited to influencers or fashion brands. I think that should be just resonated in every industry. I know the pain of rebranding, because we've rebranded twice. We're going through a rebranding exercise currently. Maybe I should speak to you after the pod. Yeah, maybe I should speak to you after the pod. But I think taking your time is super important, but also having that skill set in your internal core team, I think that's a superpower. Yep. Because you can have endless agencies at your disposal, but someone who can really feel for your brand, that just changes everything.
Yeah, I think. Thank you for the nice feedback on Careless. I think for us that's always music to our ears, because we're talking about disruption. How do you disrupt tech? Tech is constantly evolving. There's going to be new things with AI. People are going to be able to produce, apps and websites in no time. Can already do that, now in a very short space of time. But I think brand is such an interesting one, because it's forever been this holy grail of, if you can build brand, seen with Coca-Cola, all the legacy brands. And in a world where so much is coming out the gates in every industry, I think that is the most important thing. And that was always our goal with Careless, was we don't want people to think it's an insurance business when they engage with it for the first time. On our merchandising side, we actually don't even need people to know that it's an insurance app. They could just be wearing our merchandise products just because the name is good and the brand is strong. And that was kind of always the goal. I think, like anything, we're lucky that we're specialists, and we're lucky that it was received well, at least at this stage. But, that doesn't mean that for big incumbents and big insurers that the name is the most preferable. It might drive the wrong stigma. It depends on who you ask. And I think that, if you always take this approach of what is the feeling or the first impression you want people to have, and really hone in on that, it's always a good place to start, at least, because, we could have got it wrong. For some people, maybe we did. We'll find out over time. And I think, as you said, if you have the right people in house, they understand what the founder's vision is, but they also understand through deep research what the industry is like, what the pain points are, what the messaging needs to be like, what is the problem that we're actually trying to solve, because it's not just about being a digital platform. There's going to be digital insurance. There are some digital insurance. It's about changing that stigma from a necessary evil into, as you said, and it's one of our big things, is educating people on the benefits of insurance, on what they can leverage out of it, rather than feeling, I have to get it because I have a car, I have to get it because I have a house, and it's going to be painful, and I'm going to sit on the phone, and I'm probably never going to claim anyway, because it's so painful to get to that point. Like, I don't know why I'm buying it, but I have to. We're trying to solve the wider issues, and I think brand is one of them. I think it's very hard for any of these big Aviva or AXA, that there will never be a Careless. They can't. It's a different type of era of business. But I think it's interesting to push that envelope and see how different we can be from a brand perspective and a tech perspective, but also from a culture perspective. We go for meetings every week to the city. We go meet with people in offices, in boardrooms, and they all love the idea because they're like, why are you guys doing this in insurance? Like, what drove you to insanity that you want to be in the insurance industry? But I think they're also really, for lack of a better word, just pumped about it, because they're like, this is what the industry needs. We're all selling the same thing. But people are, and I think older businesses really struggle to figure out how to keep up the pace with consumer demands these days. It's a lot easier when you're agile like we are, and you can rebrand and you can reposition and you can change your tone of voice and you can keep tweaking until you get the right recipe. A lot of big companies don't have that option. And if they do, they don't know how or who to do it with.
Yeah, I think just to start off with, also, it's quite interesting. You're in the insurance space, but you're called Careless.
Yes.
Instead of careful. So I think again, it's challenging the norm, it's challenging the status quo, which is quite interesting, and that is what's going to resonate with the younger audience. That's what they need.
But I think similarly, and this is why I said earlier, knowing what your end goal is and working back is probably the most effective thing I've learned or been a part of over the years. We wanted to provoke people around this kind of stab at the industry. We're taking a name that's kind of a little bit provocative to that kind of a product, but then also thinking, okay, how do we make sure that we have B2B opportunity with HypeSight? So we need to be a bit fashion, because if we want to co-host fashion events with brands, or we want Hermes to sell our insurance with their bags, or Harvey Nichols to sell our insurance at point of sale, how do we look like the insurance company that they would work with? And similarly, we take that same approach with any B2B opportunity or any customer kind of opportunity. Students, how do we engage students in this? How do we do kind of your traditional, I think what Red Bull is probably one of the few companies in the world that's really gone from a product to an advertising or identity business. And we kind of really thought about that is we don't want to look like insurance, but we don't want to look too techy because our network still sits in fashion. And if we really want to be a different insurer and get ourselves in places where other insurers can't, we need to make sure that our DNA fits, with the insurers, but also with fashion, but also with tech. So it's that kind of knowing what all the opportunities are and working back to find some identity that could probably cater to all of them, hopefully cater to all of them. Again, time will tell. And if some of those opportunities aren't there, again, it's pivot, figure out how. And similarly, is a rebrand required? Is it beneficial? What is the root of all these things? I always like to say, well, it's the demand. And the only way we find that out
The market will tell you.
is to, trial and error.
Yeah. It's an interesting correlation. Now I can see the interesting correlation between the other businesses also. And the more you do it, hopefully you get lucky.
Yeah. That's our thesis, right? So it should work.
So what's the future for Careless? What's the aspiration in the next 2 years?
I think we've learned, we started the company in January last year. So it's been quite a short period. We've built all the IP in-house, all the app design, everything that exists is built by our team of 3 and 3 external devs. So very lean and mean. Everyone is very invested in the idea and very much invested in the kind of vision for what we're trying to achieve. I think like any regulated industry, you learn quite quickly, like finance and insurance, that who is really important. We aren't insurance people. We're not trying to look or be like insurance people. We kind of own that. It doesn't mean, though, that it's easy to get an insurer to back you or even just to give you a policy to sell. We're having to do a lot of learning of what is the demand now, from the insurance industry. D2C is an interesting space because the thesis seems to be in insurance that the cost of acquisition is too high, and that it's very hard to acquire customers. And I think that's probably one of our strengths. So we kind of see that as an opportunity. However, not having an insurance experience and not having a big name behind us of a guy who's been a heavy hitter for many, many years, you learn that it's a very tight-knit industry of almost monopolistic kind of characteristics where the insurtechs that you do see popping up usually are because the family's been in insurance for some time and they kind of got this route in because dad knows this guy and they all kind of got now 20 board advisors or whatever it might be. We don't have that, we don't have that network. So these next, this push now, the app is ready to go to market. Our website is up, everything is done, and we're kind of just waiting at the gates. But really learning now that finding this network and building this network and kind of cultivating it and getting buy-in from the market that they all know we can do the branding and marketing part. They've seen the proof of that. I think the big thing is now us speaking their language. How are we going to deal with claims fraud? How are we going to deal with fraudulent customers? How are we going to deal with AML checks? So we've had to learn a bunch of their concerns and now be able to converse with them and validate, at least to them that we understand and we can deliver on that over and above what anyone else can. And I think that we've really kind of learned that part now and we're able to do that. But it is a very slow industry. Nothing happens overnight. Everything's still done on pen and paper. It's a lot of risk for them because the industry is very much in basically putting capacity, which is just an allocation of debt toward, you guys to sell is a big risk for them, especially when you have 0 customers and you haven't launched yet. But I can also see, and I hope for us that we really do get through that door, because I think once you are through and you break through the barriers, everything else will come easier. So for us now, it's really on educating ourselves. It's on widening the network. I'm trying to post as much as I can on LinkedIn, trying to share our insights that we've learned over the past 18 months. Try and, like any time you start a business or you work for clients, you try and become an expert in the business. You try and learn as much as you can because you need to know everything to be able to succeed. Luckily, we love that. So it's for us a joy, but the parts that you can't learn online or from papers. You need to learn from people. So probably 90% of Andre and my time is spent at meetings, on calls, having calls with actuaries or different people. We've built an amazing team of advisors from Google and CFC and a lot of interesting companies, ex-Revolut engineers. So we're really lucky to have all these incredible people. But I think there's also this kind of wall, because insurance in the UK is a very healthy market in its current state. It's almost, and need to be careful of how I frame this, but I think they're really happy with how it's working.
Okay.
Because innovation is not always good for everyone. It can be really good for customers. It doesn't mean it's good for businesses that sit in the value chain. And in these types of older industries, there are a lot of stakeholders through the value chain. So I think it's for us about making sure that we can, we're going as a lean, mean platform where everything is automated and we can digitize products and we can sell them easily and you can manage them easily, you can claim easily. But we're a bit of a threat because a lot of people in that supply chain are being cut out because we can automate that. I think, like any industry, innovation has to happen. There's no way to stop it, and efficiency has to happen. It's natural progression. It's just a question of when we get through the door. We've had a lot of no's from a lot of insurers. We've had no's from some of the biggest insurance players, market, Lloyd's of London, because there isn't appetite right now. It's a cyclical business. But it's a learning experience. And I think, as we said, if you're persistent enough and you keep knocking on doors and you keep knocking on the doors from other side of the building, somebody's going to let you in at some stage. So our biggest goal, 2025, would just be trading. We've just closed our seed A.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have really strong demand from everyone we're working with, really strong interest. We just need somebody and hopefully it's going to be this month, holding thumbs. We're waiting for our first real kind of market entry for Q1 next year. And I think once we have that, it's going to be, again, learning. Okay, now the app is live. We have bugs. There's a leak on floor 3. We need I hope next year will be a very busy year. And I think for us, the goal is to be the insurance for everything, your one-stop shop. If you want to insure your pet or your car or your house or your gadgets, it's to create that customer convenience. And I think sticking true to our vision of, hassle-free insurance doesn't have to be a myth. It's something we can do. We know that consumers are modern. We know what we want to deliver. It's just breaking into a dinosaur industry takes a little bit of time.
But also, nothing great comes easy.
No,
and it shouldn't. I think in this day and age of us, diminishing attention span, which is, I think, diminishing by the second. The biggest value is then attention, and that attention, that we're all trying to fight for. Also, the core of that attention is brand.
Yep.
So I think, again, in my personal opinion, from whatever I've seen so far of your brand, I think you have somehow nailed that.
Thank you.
Everything else is just detail.
Yeah.
Because like you rightly said, yes, you're going to go mad at the learning curve and you're going to learn whatever you know today, you're going to know so much more in the next 6 months and 12 months anyway.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's anyway inevitably going to happen. But how many companies are going to be able to break that mold and grab that attention and build that brand? I think that really is the differentiator, which you guys have achieved. So, I wish you all the best for 2025 and execution. And, when you guys start actually selling, we should talk.
Yeah.
And we should. It'll be nice to bring you back on the pod to see, how you progress. That'll be nice. But I think it's just amazing what you guys are building. I think disruption is super important and it's needed within the space. Also because the space has changed, the buyer has changed, and the buyer just demands something different.
Agreed.
Before we end the pod, Scott, what would you tell your younger self who's now in the boarding school back in South Africa?
It's something, especially when I turned 30, that, you know, a lot of people ask what you stress about, and this is the question I always kind of mull over. We're talking about luck earlier. I don't know if maybe it's luck or it's just you're just being steered in a direction. I think I would probably tell myself to have gone for the risky things, you know, trusted my gut earlier. I don't think I wasted time learning what I did, working in a bank, getting a finance degree, economics, etc. I think that's all become very useful for me, and I think, as we said, knowledge is key in anything. So those learnings have all been really good. I do wonder, though, you know, how much more I would have learned if I'd just gone for those early ventures that I had. If I hadn't listened, if I'd already built my social following, if I'd already built that first travel business and all these different things. But I think that the biggest takeaway is probably trust your gut. Don't listen to other people. The people who probably are telling you, you know, not to do that stuff or not to take that, they're risk averse people. They're not going to do it themselves. I think my biggest joy in life has been meeting all the amazing, wonderful people, you know, you guys, and kind of learning, like we said, about which fruits you really like and which ones you don't. Because once you find the ones that you do like, they give you a lot of joy, you know, and you actually start to enjoy your work, you start to enjoy your job. It stops feeling like a job. And those years, maybe if I had gone for those opportunities earlier, I wouldn't have known the pain of doing the things that I don't like. So for anyone, you know, I would just say, take the risk. If you have that gut, if you have that hunch, fail early, learn it early. You get miles ahead of other people in practical sense of building businesses. And if one day you want to be an entrepreneur, I think the earlier that you can start, the better. If that's a side hustle, if it's while you're doing your studies. But I think this, and you will know, there's things you can't learn anywhere else but in the nitty-gritty or in the struggles. And have fun doing it. You know, life is long. We're gonna work. I don't think I'll ever retire. I don't know what I would do with myself. I'd freak out. But I think the earlier you can find it out, the more happy and the more fulfillment you know you have out of your career. Sitting here for 2 hours on your guys' amazing pod, for example, maybe when I was 18, I would have thought it was boring. I'm like, wow, highlight of the week, amazing. We just get to sit and talk about business all day. It's like easy day in the office. But no, I think in closing from my side, just thank you for having me. Funny to see how people throughout your life can connect you.
Oh, absolutely. It's just crazy.
Similarly, awesome to hear more of your journey. I mean, today has not really been so much about your journey, so I am going to have to come back off pod just to sit with you and hear your stories. But similarly, I really look forward to watching you guys in the space and seeing where Plum takes you. I, to be honest, have no doubt. And if you ever have doubts about the brand, you just let me know and I'll come for coffee and I can give you whatever wisdom I do have in there. But you know, when you love things, when you love what you do, I think that's the joy of it. As we'll both know, speaking and working with other founders is kind of one of the luxuries you get out of having been an early founder or having worked for a long time. So, you know, thank you for having us and for letting me blab on for 3 hours about so many things.
No, thank you so much. I mean, I'm also not going anywhere. I mean, this is just the beginning. I don't think I'll ever retire as well. But I think that takeaway is super important. Follow your gut, take the risk, because you never want to die with a what if.
There you go. Agreed.
Thank you for coming on the pod.
Thank you.
Thank you.